How's it going, everybody? Handsome Dan here, and today we have some gameplay for you. This was a test game that we recorded prior to the start of the Grand Tournament. We're still working out some of the logistical issues for the Grand Tournament, but consider this a practice run. Today's game features 4 players: Rob, Ryan, Nick, and me, Handsome Dan. The decks brought today are Vorinclex, Monstrous Raider, Minn, Wily, Illusionist, Bruenor, Battlehammer, and Osgir, the Reconstructor. Unfortunately, since we were just playing a test game, I didn't get the starting hands for y'all. But let's go ahead and get into the gameplay. Nick wins the pregame die roll, and he's going to be going first. Nick's going to start off with the Temple of Triumph, which comes into play tapped. He scries 1 to the top and then passes. I play a Plains and immediately tap it for a Soul Ring, and then tap the Soul Ring for an Arcane Signet, and then tap the Signet for a Mother of Runes. Rob's just going to play a Snow Forest for turn, and then tap it to play a Hardened Scales, and then pass. Ryan's just going to play an Island as land for turn, and then pass. Nick's going to go to his turn, and then play a Plains and a Mishra's Bauble, passing after that. On my upkeep, he's going to crack that Mishra's Bauble to look at the top card of my library, and get a delayed draw for himself. I go to my main phase on my turn. I'm going to play a War Room as land for turn, and then cast a Talisman of Conviction. I use my remaining mana to go ahead and cast my commander, Bruenor Battlehammer. With no more mana, I go ahead and pass. Rob's going to play out his second Snow Forest for his turn, and then he's going to pass. Ryan's going to go to his turn and play an Island as land for turn, and then tap out to go ahead and cast a Mind Stone. He's going to pass after that. It's going to bring us back to the top of the order for turn 3. Nick's going to go ahead and play a Mountain as land for turn, and then cast a Dig Site Engineer. The rest of the table is off to a pretty slow start so far, so I go ahead and go to my turn after Nick passes. On my turn, I go ahead and play a Mountain as land for turn, and then I cast a Fighter class, which I use to tutor for a Sword of Fire and Ice. I then play out the sword and equip it for free using Bruenor's ability. Going to combat, I swing 9 commander damage over at Ryan, bringing him down to 31. With that sword trigger, I draw a card, and then I choose to shoot Rob in the face for 2. In my second main phase, I cast a Shadow Spear, and then I go ahead and pass. Over on Rob's turn, the only thing he can do is go ahead and play out a Karn's Bastion, followed by a Kodama's Reach. That's going to let him go search his library for 2 basics, put 1 forest onto the battlefield tapped, and the other forest to his hand. He's going to pass after that. Now over to Ryan's turn, he's going to play an Island as land for turn, and then tap out to cast a Phantasmal Dreadmaw, and then he's going to pass his turn. Back over to Nick's turn, he's going to go ahead and play a Mountain as his land for turn, and then cast an Excavation Technique, choosing to demonstrate. He chooses Rob to be the opponent who also gets to copy the spell, and Rob's going to go ahead and blow up his own Hardened Scales. Nick's going to then destroy my Sword of Fire and Ice, and also my Fighter class. That's going to make me 4 treasures, and Rob's going to get 2 from blowing up his Hardened Scales. With 2 of my permanents now blown up, I'll go ahead and go to my turn where I'll miss a land drop. I play out a Maul of the Skyclaves, which is going to automatically attach to Bruenor, and then use the free equip on Shadow Spear and go to combat. Bruenor is now going to be a 12/5 with Flying, Lifelink, and Trample. So I could just go ahead and choose to kill Ryan here, but since we're just playing for fun, I go ahead and swing 12 in the air at Nick instead for blowing up my permanents, and he's going to take 12 commander damage. I gain 12 life from Lifelink and move to my second main phase. I'm then going to go ahead and play out a Forging the Tyrite Sword, making a treasure for the first part of the saga, and then I pass. On Rob's turn, he's going to play a Castle Garenbrig as land for turn. Then, using the treasures that he got from blowing up his own Hardened Scales, he's going to cast a Bane of Progress. This is awful for me, and so I activate War Room in response to go ahead and try to draw a card. Unable to find an answer, I crack 2 treasures before the Bane of Progress comes in, and it's going to come in with 7 counters total from all the artifacts that it blew up. Rob's going to play an Ozlith for his turn, and then pass. Ryan's going to be up next, and so for his turn, he's going to cast his commander, Minn, Wily, Illusionist. He's then going to swing at Rob with a Phantasmal Dreadmaw, and Rob's going to choose to block with his Bane of Progress. After we take a second to read Ryan's commander, Rob still decides to block, and so when the Dreadmaw dies, Ryan gets to put in a permanent with CMC equal to or less than the power of his illusion that died. And so he chooses to put in a Consecrated Sphinx and then pass. We're back over to Nick now, who goes ahead and draws, and whenever he draws, Ryan's going to draw 2 cards from the Consecrated Sphinx, and then also make an illusion as a result of his commander. Nick's going to miss his land drop, but then he's going to cast an Aethersworn Canonist, paying 2 to make a construct from the Digsite Engineer. He's then going to pass. We go over to my turn now, and when I draw, Ryan's going to draw 2 more cards and make another illusion. Right now I'm feeling pretty bad for not choosing to kill Ryan earlier in this game, especially when I missed my land drop. The only thing I can do after that is swing with Bruenor and give him protection from blue, thanks to the Mother of Runes. Ryan can't block that, so he's going to take 5 commander damage, going up to 14 commander damage. I then play out my own Aethersworn Canonist and pass the turn. Over to Rob now, who's going to draw, and then Ryan's going to draw 2 more cards and make another illusion. Rob's going to play a Snow Forest as land for turn, and then cast his commander, Vorinclex, Monstrous Raider. He chooses to swing at Ryan with his Bane of Progress, and Ryan's going to go ahead and block with all 3 of his illusions, which all trade with the Bane of Progress and give Ryan 3 triggers from his commander. The 3 permanents that he's going to get are going to be Ashnod's Altar, Phyrexian Altar, and Phantasmal Mount. The Bane of Progress is going to die, and when it dies, its counters will go over onto the Ozolith, but these get doubled because of Vorinclex, putting a total of 14 counters on that Ozolith. Rob's going to go ahead and pass the turn after that. On Ryan's turn, he decides to use his mana to go ahead and cast Toothy, Imaginary Friend, forgetting about the second part of Vorinclex where he can't get counters. He's then going to go ahead and go to combat and swings the Consecrated Sphinx over at me for 4 damage. With nothing else, he goes ahead and passes his turn. Back over to Nick now, and he's going to go ahead and draw, where Ryan's going to draw 2 and then make another illusion. He puts counters on Toothy, which is a mistake, but we catch that later. Nick then goes ahead and plays a Rings of Brighthearth and then casts a Faithless Looting, which will have Ryan drawing another 2. Ryan also mistakenly makes another illusion, but we also catch that a little bit later on in the game. Nick's going to go ahead and play a Mountain as land for turn after that, and then pass. On my turn, I'm going to go ahead and draw, and then Ryan's going to draw 2 and make another illusion. I attempt to cast a Savin's Reclamation, but Ryan has responses. First off, he's going to realize that he has too many illusions, and so he gets rid of the extra. Then, he's going to use his Phantasmal Mount to give +1/+0 to one of his illusions, and then sack that illusion to the Phyrexian Altar for an extra blue mana. The death trigger is going to let him drop in an Azami, Lady of Scrolls. He then sacks the Phantasmal Mount to get another blue mana, and then put in an island from his hand. He then uses the 2 floating blue mana to cast an Arcane Denial to counter my spell. With nothing else, I go to combat, giving Bruenor protection from blue, and swinging at Ryan again for another 5 commander damage. This is going to bring him up to 19 commander damage, but with nothing else, I go ahead and pass the turn after that. Over to Rob's turn now. I'm going to go ahead and draw 2 from the Arcane Denial, and Ryan's going to go ahead and draw 1. He gets the trigger from his Consecrated Sphinx, and he's going to draw another 2 and make another illusion. Rob goes and draws for turn, but Ryan misses his Consecrated Sphinx trigger, so he misses out on 2 cards here. Rob's going to go ahead and play out Forest for land for turn, and then he's going to attempt to cast Vivian Reed. Ryan's going to go ahead and choose to counter it with the Pact of Negation. And so in retaliation, Rob goes to combat, and that Ozolith we all forgot about triggers. Rob's Vorinclex is going to get 14 counters, and that's going to be doubled up to 28 counters instead at the beginning of combat. The Vorinclex is going to go ahead and swing over at Ryan, who desperately taps 2 of his wizards with the Azami to go ahead and draw 2 cards, and then cycles a card. But despite all the cards he drew, he has no relevant responses, and he's going to go ahead and die to commander damage to Vorinclex. With nothing else, Rob's going to go ahead and pass the turn. It's now Nick's turn, and so he misses his land drop, but he's still going to be able to play out a Jorkadine, the Prevailer. Metalcraft is on, which means his creatures are going to get +3/+0. He's going to go to combat, but he chooses to only swing with his Construct at Rob. This is going to be for 6 damage, and so Rob will take 6, and then Nick will pass the turn. It's desperation time on my turn, and so the only thing I can really do is play a Darksteel Citadel as land for turn, and then use it to cast the Helm of the Host. I equip it to Bruenor for free, and at the beginning of combat, I make a token copy of Bruenor, and I swing at Rob for 14 damage, with 9 of it being Commander. With nothing else, I go ahead and pass. We go over to Rob's turn, where he realizes that he's not in that great of a position anymore, and so he decides to go for a flex play instead. He plays a Tyrite Sanctum as land for turn, and then uses it for 2 more counters on Vorinclex. Then he activates Karn's Bastion to proliferate, and makes another 2 counters on Vorinclex. Then he goes to combat, and since he could die to either me or Nick, he decides to choose to swing at me instead. I can't do anything to stop the trample damage, and so I die to commander damage from Vorinclex. We then go over to Nick's turn, and he's going to count up his damage for lethal and then swing out his board at Rob. That means that your winner for this game is going to be Nick. Since this game was just a test for the recording, we were playing a little bit looser than normal, but I still think that most of the decks got to show off exactly what it is that they could do. I got off to a pretty hot start with Bruenor, but unfortunately, that got curbed by that Bane of Progress, which took me out of the game entirely. Ryan was playing a brand new deck, but you could see how it could be threatening with a little bit more tuning and optimization. And of course, Rob showed us that you absolutely cannot let the Ozolith or Vorinclex sit on the board for too long. As for Nick's deck, it wasn't able to do too much in this game, but it just goes to show you how sometimes you can sneak in a win with a slower start or a lower powered deck when compared to the rest of the table. If everybody else is cannibalizing each other, then you just need to wait your turn for your chance to strike when everyone else is low on resources or low on life. That's going to be it for this game though, so thanks everybody for watching, and stay tuned as we start playing our matches for the Grand Tournament. Let us know your thoughts on this video and any other feedback that you might have in the comments. Have a good one everybody, and take care.